I'm rolling. Yes.
I'm rolling too.
Cool.
We're rolling down the river.
Oh, man.
As they say.
Rolling. Man, we got some Proud Mary going on here at the beginning of our movie podcast. Oh, well.
Appropriate.
Yeah. It's the arts. We love the arts.
Very true.
But we are back here for another episode of the Cinema Discovery Project. I'm Stephen Billings, and once again, as always, with my confidant, my movie friend, many. I could go through many names, but his name is Andrew Cabral. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Co-host at arms was something that came to mind,
yes.
but I guess any terms of endearment will work.
Sure.
I accept them all.
Yeah.
No bias here.
But if you didn't watch last week's or listen to last week's, you know what today's subject is. We are talking about the Japanese film from 1953, Ugetsu.
Yes, Ugetsu.
And we'll be getting into that very soon. But up top, we got some news that we want to share with you that will pertain to the future of this podcast.
Yes, some podcasting news.
Yeah, podcasting news. Now, don't get afraid. We're not done. If you're really you think you're like upset, you're like getting sweats. The people that actually like listening to us.
Did you ever get that? Yeah, do you ever get a sense of dread when when someone's got a special announcement for some, whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it's a podcast, you always
or just in general, somebody's like, I need to talk to you about something, and you like,
I know,
you start to get upset.
We got to talk when you get a chance.
Yeah, I hate that when somebody's like, hey, can I call you later? Like, I got something to talk to you about. I hate that. Just tell me now. I hate that shit.
I know. What could it possibly be?
But right now we're holding off.
Could be anything.
We're doing it to our audience because we're holding off what we're saying.
We're assholes.
Yeah. But so me and Andrew, we're always trying to think of ways to be better as podcasters, and we want to, we keep usually every year we reevaluate ourselves to see what we can do differently. When we started Cinema Discovery Project, it's a little over 2 years ago. We started out the podcast as a very broad podcast, talking about many subjects on film, and then about a year in, we decided we wanted to do more focused episodes on just specific films. And that's something that we got comfortable doing, and we still love doing it. But as our interests, as we've reevaluated and just started thinking about what was the thing that we could really give the most passion to, the thing that we kind of sprinkle into the podcast we do already, and also kind of fold in what we do already into something new. So almost a phoenix rising out of the ashes deal here with something brand new that gives you us, but also I think a refocus on something else that we really love, we have a big passion for, which is physical media. So without further ado, we are deciding we're going to kind of rebrand this podcast feed, and we are going to now start doing a new show, and it's going to be called Chasing Labels. And if you don't understand that lingo, when we talk about labels, we're talking about boutique labels, which is, the physical media labels that we kind of buy most of our stuff from, whether it be Criterion Collection, Arrow Video, Kino, there's tons of them. And, me and Andrew, we talk about it all the time, how much we love physical media. And we feel like, not only can we be getting into something current, but also, we can focus in on Blu-ray releases and things like that, things that we're very engaged in all the time. And we feel like that's where our energy is best used going forward. So, what do you think about this news? Are you excited for this, Andrew? I mean...
Yeah, well, you're doing all the talking.
Well, yeah,
because it is Steven's brainchild. For those of you who want a peek behind the scenes,
sure, yeah.
To a certain extent. Obviously, there's
I always discuss it with him, but it's something I came up with that I thought would be good moving forward. Right.
Yeah, we collaborated upon what in which direction to take the podcast in. Some things, I mean, the heart of the podcast will probably never change. It's going to be us talking about movies. That's the whole point of this whole thing. But I guess the context around it will change slightly. Instead of doing super duper duper deep dives into movies, we'll be talking specifically about the physical media brand of movies, and specifically movie collecting. I mean, movie fandom and movie collecting seem to have gone hand in hand now for years. I think most specifically for Steven and I mean, it's something that is very much a big part of our lives. So in a way, we're integrating the podcast even more within our lives in terms of what we're just doing normally anyways. And that is buying movies from different labels, as the title of the podcast will say, and talking about them. Every time I talk to Steven, we're always talking about the new stuff we get from this place, from that place, different editions that are out there, different editions that are coming up for certain movies, and in a way we can integrate that into the show as well as talking about the movies themselves.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes it's sometimes it's movies that we've already seen and we're getting better or newer or for the first time editions of, or it's brand new movies that we've never seen before. I know Steven tends to buy a lot more stuff that he's not familiar with, while I tend to stay with stuff I'm more familiar with. Seems to be the patterns.
It's something we'll get into with the new show, probably even right off the bat, talking about our collecting habits, this is where we both kind of differ, where he tends to be more, you could say more conservative. He picks the things that he likes and he knows, when I'm a little bit more cavalier. Yeah, I'm a little bit more Wild West. And I'll
very much so.
I'll go and buy things I've never seen and even things I know probably won't even be that good. But there's a certain maybe relevance to them in another way that I respect, that I wanted in my collection.
And we'll also talk about how sometimes, the movies themselves may not be the best, but the editions that they come in can be amazing. Yeah. I mean, that oftentimes happens.
But that comes with a point of view on how you look at cinema in general.
And how you approach your personal movie fandom.
Your collection shows a lot about your taste.
Actually very, very true. I have just thinking about that, I have mostly dramas and mostly like serious movies versus like comedy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't buy that many comedy movies just in general. I don't know why. That just always seems to be the trend.
Yeah.
Now that I look at my collection here around.
Yeah, but let's not start
let's not dwell on this right now. We're just saying that it's going to be changing the name of the podcast, but we're still going to be talking about movies.
Yeah, it's just not, the one main thing that kind of brought me to the realization that I wanted to make a change was just, that a lot of people do what we already have been doing, which is, reviewing movies on a deep scale. And, we were picking movies more obscure and not everybody was always looking at, but, I wanted to get away from something that would be so easy, I don't want us to rest on our laurels. I want doing the podcast to be more than just, going off of just base knowledge. I want to be able to, expand my horizons a little more. And also, I think there's just also an inherent, this actually makes things also at the same time easier because it's inherent in what we do already, so
pretty much,
it's going to be easier for us to, I don't want the podcast to become homework, a chore. Just put it that way. I'm looking out for the future of how I feel in doing this podcast. And I know that doing this type of show, I think, will keep me excited every week or every other week, depending on how frequent this would. And it'll still be an every other week podcast. Right. But if things get, better, if things are moving good, maybe it'll get more than that. We'll see. But There's always new releases coming out. We'll be doing that. We'll be talking about new releases. Maybe some new Blu-rays we've recently gotten. We'll probably do some Blu-ray reviews, but we'll get more into that when we do our first episode, which will be the next episode we post. You'll start to see all the platforms that we have our stuff changing everything over to the new title of Chasing Labels. So get excited for that. Let us know what you think of that idea. But now that we're past that announcement, we're going to do our kind of final episode, I guess you could say, of the Cinema Discovery Project in this name. And that will be on the, as I said, 1953 Japanese film, Ugetsu, that was chosen by Andrew. So why did you choose this one, Andrew?
It was one because I typically do what I normally do and completely forget to choose a movie before the show. So I panic search during the middle of the show and pick a movie. So I went to my letterbox and looked at the highest rated films I have and saw what looked good. And I don't know, it just feels like a movie that I just wanted to talk about. It was also a movie that Steven had never seen before up until now. And I don't know if he's ever seen a film by this director of Kenji Mizoguchi.
I've seen Sancho the Bailiff. It's been a while though, but I've seen that one. That's the only one I think I've seen of his.
Yeah, and he's another director that was introduced to me through the Criterion Collection, coincidentally, that we talk about Chasing Labels. And as many I would say foreign language directors or international language directors, that I was introduced to him through the Criterion Collection, but also kind of just blind buying his movies just based off of reputation and based off of what people were saying. Yeah. I would just look at hey, what are people buying when it comes to the Criterion Collection? Back when I was first time collecting, and everyone was buying Sancho the Bailiff at the time. Yeah. So I was like, oh, I'll buy Sancho the Bailiff, and I watched the movie, and I'm like, this movie's amazing. Mm-hmm. Let me see what else he's got. So they've been steadily releasing a couple of his movies over the last couple of years: Sancho the Bailiff, Life of Oharu. This movie Ugetsu, and I want to say I always forget the title of this movie, so I have to look it up. But I think it's Story of Chikamatsu or something like that. A Story of Chikamatsu. I was right. Damn,
you're good.
Mine is better than I thought it was. But he's got a bunch of stuff there. He has a whole Eclipse set called Kenji Mizoguchi's Fallen Women, which is coincidentally another theme in this movie. Is the idea of fallen women, which I thought was very interesting. And I've seen a couple of those movies. I want to say on Filmstruck a few years ago, or maybe even the Criterion Channel. But that's the set that I want to get. But there's only 5 Blu-rays. One I didn't mention is the story of the Last Chrysanthemum, which I do have as well. But anywho, Ugetsu, of all the films I've seen of Mizoguchi so far, Ugetsu seems to be the least pessimistic one. His movies tend to be very pessimistic when it comes to the outlook on life, and seem to be very dour and just very heavy dramatic films that, but by the time you leave the film, it's not exactly an upper. You know what I mean? Yeah. Not exactly a positive movie to, oh, wow, what a great movie. I feel so optimistic about life now. That's not really his style. And Ugetsu may actually be the lighter of his films dealing with all that stuff.
You've seen more of his movies, but I was going to say, even this movie isn't really
Again, this movie's not exactly optimistic.
Yeah, it's about running its characters through the ringer.
Pretty much. But, psychological and physical ringer. Yeah. But this film is actually based on a book from the 18th century of the same name, which I think it's called Tales of Ugetsu, The Tales of Wave After the Rain Moon. And I think it's also called Ugetsu Monogatari. But he basically took 2 stories from this, I believe, anthology-type book, and he based the movie off of them. And the two ones that he drew from was one called The House in the Thicket and The Lust of the White Serpent, which is a great title. It's a great title.
That sounds like a Whitesnake album.
It really does. It really does. That does sound like a great album title. But I guess we'll just get into it right away. But I would say Kenji Mizoguchi is a great Japanese director.
I think he's held up as one of the top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't get talked about, I think, as much. I always think of like Ozu and Kurosawa get top
And
billings.
then there's like Kobayashi is down a little bit, and then there's like Mizoguchi's like right there with Kobayashi, I think. Like
yes, and then but he actually passed away in when did he pass? 1958, I believe, at 56 years old.
So he was cut short, man.
No, he passed away in 1956 at 58 years old. I had that reversed.
3 years later, he was this. Yeah.
Yeah, so 3 years later, this may have been.
It's one of his last. Has to be.
It's not. It's not his last film. It's actually his like. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 8th to last film.
Jeez.
Coincidentally, he did this film right after The Life of Oharu, and coincidentally, the success of that movie is kind of what got him the ability to do this movie. Apparently, I was reading that The Life of Oharu was so successful that I think Nagisa Oshima basically got him to make a movie with his production company, and he basically gave him complete carte blanche, like you can make whatever movie you want. You don't have to, like be beholden to the studio or something like that. Nagisa Oshima is another great Japanese director, from that time, and yeah, so he made Sancho the Bailiff after this. He made A Story from Chikamatsu after this. That movie is depressing as hell. And then the last movie he ever did was called Street of Shame, which I believe I've seen. I think it's part of that Eclipse set from Criterion, dealing with fallen women or prostitutes, if you will, which is an interesting theme in this film in Ugetsu. But we'll get to it. So I guess we'll just dive right in. There's going to be spoiler-tastic here, so watch out.
And this movie's only like 96 minutes long.
Yeah, so it's really concise.
It's a good watch. If you're getting into Mizoguchi, this might be a good starting place, you think?
Yeah, I think it's his most manageable film, like I said, from a thematic standpoint, because everything's kind of laid out pretty well. Yeah. Everything's laid out really well, and also, like I said, the runtime's like 97 minutes. It's not long at all. Yeah. But what's also really cool is even though it's that short, every single scene is important, and every single scene just pushes everything forward. It's really well paced.
Definitely.
So getting into the movie, it is a period piece. It's set in 16th century 16th century feudal Japan, I want to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's civil war going on.
And yeah, there's all kind of civil wars happening. It's set in the Azuchi, Momoyama period, which was the period from 1573 to 1600, and it's a period piece, obviously. So we start out with, I believe, and this film has a few characters in it, and we'll get into it as the story goes along. Our main character, you could say, is Genjuro, and he is a potter. He makes pottery, and he lives in this film kind of revolves around like farmers and peasants and people who are just trying to live and survive. Yeah, it's a very interesting look at people like that. It's not about royalty. It's not about government officials. It's not
a samurai movie.
It's not a samurai movie, although there are samurais in it. It's very de-glamorized when it comes to that whole era, which I guess a lot of kind of samurai films I wouldn't say glorify that era, but they show hey, it's kind of cool to be a samurai. This movie doesn't really show that it's cool to be a samurai.
No. Well, I mean, there are definitely some filmmakers that have done samurai movies. Like for instance, I bring up Kobayashi. We talk about Harakiri. I mean, that's a movie about how the establishment of samurai can be kind of evil. It's not glorifying samurai. And,
the bureaucracy of it all.
Yeah, and then in this film, samurai are kind of like the upper class, the bullies. They're kind of the bullies of the working class.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's different. I mean, this is a whole.
Of course, there's different clans.
There's different classes of samurai, I would say. there are people there are, like you said, like the hired samurai, the people who are, like higher up, aristocratic, you could say. And not really, but they work for really wealthy people and they make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Then you have like Ronin, who are like traveling samurai, like someone like Zatoichi.
Yeah.
If you know Zatoichi the Blind Swordsman, he's a Ronin. He just travels around and stuff. But those seem to be most of the samurai. They don't have the luxurious armor or the cool ass armor that you see some samurai have. They mostly just travel around with the sword. I think of like Usagi Yojimbo, that comic book, stuff like that. But anywho, that's that. So we start off with, like I said, Genjiro, who is like a potter, peasant, farmer, and he lives like kind of like far out. You would say like far out in the woods.
Let's just say they're in the
countryside.
They're in the suburbs of Japan.
I would say more rural than suburbs. They're like in the mountains, basically.
It's an equivalent to today's standards. It's like you're living in the country suburbs. There's village. It's a village.
The countryside.
It's a village.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, and there's like a really small village, but he does pottery on the side, and I believe the film starts out with him. He's about to go to town to sell.
Yes.
Sell his pottery.
Yeah, he's on his. He's got his wagon loaded up. His wife
wagon all loaded
wife
up.
is kind of like worried about him because the Civil War is getting closer and closer to where they live. So she's doesn't really want him to go, but knows that it's necessary. And what you get off the bat here is that his character is very much. I mean, he's definitely entrepreneurial. He wants to provide, right. But it seems like maybe that he's a little bit too invested in just. It's like he it's all he cares about is making money. Well, I mean, yeah, I think that becomes even more prevalent a little slightly later on. But right away, it seems rather innocent. Guess,
we're gradually building towards a greedy psychosis, if you will.
Yeah.
And he's on his way to leave. Like, his wife's name is Miyagi. I did learn that they have a small son, not a small son, but they have a young son who, I don't know, is probably 4 or 5 elementary school age,
4 or 5 years old, something like that.
Maybe a little older than that. I don't know, but he's leaving her to go sell to make money, but who accompanies him is his ne'er-do-well neighbor friend man. This guy is an interesting character. His name is Tobei. And he decides that he's gonna go there because he wants to buy armor and be a samurai, and he's got lofty goals for somebody who really doesn't have much in the way of social movement in his life.
It feels like he's not a. I mean, he's ambitious to become a samurai. It's like but he always sees is what it's like the people today that look at people that have money and don't know about the work that it takes to become that thing. So he just wants what samurai have, but doesn't understand what it means to become that thing.
Yeah, he just thinks you can just put on
armor and have a spear and you're like a samurai.
And then you're all set.
You're good. That makes you.
But his wife doesn't want him to leave because she knows that he's oblivious to what it really takes.
Yeah.
Like, she thinks that he's just doing it to duck his responsibilities.
Yeah.
As of being a husband and stuff like that.
She knows him better than he knows himself. Like it's.
Yes. Yeah. And he's constantly, for lack of a better term, effing up throughout this movie.
Yeah.
He's constantly doing that. So they go to. He pulls the car and the guy and Gunjiro stays behind so the stuff doesn't fall out. Anywho, we don't actually see them go to the bigger city, not a city, but like bigger village or the place to sell the wares. But we do see when Genjiro returns. And Genjiro returns, and apparently he's been very successful. He's got like silver pieces in his hand, and he's like super happy, and everything seems to be going well. This movie starts out very optimistic.
Yeah.
And then does take a lot of dark turns later on. And But now that he's gotten this little bit taste of success, he wants so much more. And as Steven says, he becomes greedy for it. He wants it desperately.
Yeah, I mean, he buys her, like, it's like you said, it is innocent, but you can tell that he's not understanding the value of what he's doing. He's it's good to provide for your family and to get them nice things, but it shouldn't be like the goal. Like, it should be about being happy, which is what his wife is very much. All she wants is to just be with her husband. There's a scene right after this. He buys her things. They're eating dinner. Everything.
Well, I want to talk about the scene before I didn't mean to cut you off,
okay.
But it's the scene where she's turning.
That's where I was heading at.
Oh, is that where you're going?
Yeah. It's they eat dinner and everybody's happy. She's in love with her husband. Everything's great. But then he's like, well, I need to make more. I need to go back to work. So there's a scene where she helps him spin the pottery wheel, and their son keeps kind of like wanting to be involved, but he's getting annoyed by his son, so he like yells at him to leave, and basically his wife is like, you're not the same person. You're not doing. She recognizes that he's not doing this for the right reasons, and she's like, I just want to be happy. I just want you to be here. I just want you to be a kind person. Yeah,
he becomes obsessed with he's like, oh, we're never going to finish this if he keeps getting in the way. Just get the kid out of here. And he's just becoming super obsessed with working constantly to make as many, pots and cups and plates and vases and all kinds of stuff in order for him to sell to make more money, because he's gotten a taste of that success already, and he's kind of addicted to it. Yeah. And he really just, can't help himself. He becomes like almost drunk on his greed. And so he sets up, but he also enlists his friend to help him out in terms of like loading up the kiln. I think they call it a kiln. Basically a giant oven that they're going to cook these pots in so that they harden up. Because the pots, when you form them from the clay, are still wet and malleable, and you can still... Yeah. And they're not quite fully formed yet. You gotta... Basically,
well, they lay them out in the sun to get somewhat hard. And then after that, then they put them in the oven.
And that gets them hard enough to put them in the kiln. So he says... So his friend's like... hey, since I'm helping you out, do I get a cut of the profits? And he's like, oh yeah, you get a third. Yeah. He's like, oh, a third, all right. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna buy that armor. That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah. And so he loads up the kiln, and basically all of this happens in the first 30 minutes of the movie. So we're not really skipping over anything too big here. And they load it up, and they're putting they're keeping the fire going. They're putting the firewood inside. And what happens is that army that they were worried was going to come ends up showing up in the middle of the night at the worst possible time. It's the Shibata Katsuyi's army. That's what they're called. And what happens is they're sweeping through the village, and they're just like
they're
just trashing the place.
Yeah, I mean they're
raiding the place. They're stealing shit.
Taking food, raping women.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible shit. I mean, it is the time in which the stuff took place. This stuff did happen a lot, and we see it happen. We don't see it graphically happen.
No.
Mizoguchi shows
it's implied.
It's implied to where we're like, this is obviously what is going on.
Yeah.
And basically everybody's scrambling and they're retreating to the mountainside.
Well, what they do is
that's where they're going to go hide out.
They store the pots and things into the oven to make sure they keep doing their thing, getting harder. And then they kind of, like you said, run away and
evacuate.
Yeah, they evacuate the village, and so they try to. Don't they try to make their way? No.
Well, they go to that mountain.
Yes.
And then Genjuro he wants to go back to check on the kiln.
Yeah.
Like he's like, oh, if that fire went out, it's going to be ruined.
Yeah.
This batch is going to be ruined. We can't ruin this batch. Initially, he wanted to stay.
Yeah.
He wanted to stay, and his wife's like, no, you can't stay. You're going to get killed.
Yeah.
But what Mizoguchi does is he intercuts like their frantic like desperation of trying to leave with like the soldiers they're the soldiers like barging into places, and with the soldiers apparently taking men to work, and they're basically just taking women, literally, like we just said, and so there's a lot of cross-cutting happening, a lot of confusion happening within that scene, and it's really good. So he wants to stay, but his wife convinces him not to. So they leave, and then he goes back to check up on it.
Yeah, like right before he gets there, they get to their house and realize that there's nothing there but pots. So then they just
they do. Yeah, the soldiers show up and they open up the kiln.
Yeah,
and they just like it's just pots. It's nothing.
Yeah,
They just leave it there. But he's like hiding out, and then he goes and checks on the pots. He's like, and then he sees the fire is out, and it's like, damn, it's ruined. He thinks it's ruined, but then he checks, and apparently no, they're done.
Yeah.
So he starts unloading them, and then at this point, his wife is there, as well as the neighbors, who is Ohama and Tobei, like I mentioned. His name is also Jinichi as well, but I think he may have, I think Jinichi stayed behind with Ohama, and I think it's just Tobei, Miyagi, and Genjuro are there. And basically they say, well, we can still get this to the market.
Yeah.
But they decide that they're going to go by boat instead of by wagon.
Yeah, because they
can't get through.
Yeah, because there's too many opportunities to be, of course, stopped and raided and
killed,
maybe killed.
Yeah. But apparently Ohama is the daughter of a boatman or something like that, so she knows how to use a boat, and she knows how to sail.
Yeah.
Not really sail, but you know what I mean. She knows how to use a boat, so they basically load up this boat. And they are going to make their way across. I don't know if it's a river.
Maybe it's like a channel or something.
Something like that. Anywho, what's so cool about this whole sequence is of them on the boat on this in the water is that it's done in a way where there's fog all the way around them, so you feel as if like they are in like this like a mystical, spooky, scary place of like a mysterious, something mysteriously bad could happen at any point because they're just stuck in this fog, and it creates a very eerie experience. And while they're traveling across this water, they come a boat ends up coming towards them, and there's this guy in there, and apparently he was attacked by pirates.
Yeah.
And he's like injured or whatever. He asks for some water, and then he just passes out and dies.
Yeah. Like, just in time to tell them that pirates are coming, and then
you watch out. He basically tells them, "Watch out for the pirates," and then
he's like, "And watch your women. They will take your women."
Yeah. So they have to decide what do we do here? Do we do we go forward or do we do something else? So they decide that they are going to leave Miyagi and Jinichi on land, and so that they can like travel back to the mountain, escape place or whatever. And then Ohama, Genjuro, and Tobei are going to go forward and sell the pots.
I thought this was a terrible idea.
It was a really shitty plan.
At least,
but it's a shitty plan, but it's purposely bad for the plot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's purposely bad because it shows that Genjuro shouldn't have done that. His first priority should be to protect his wife and his son. Yeah. But he's too blinded by selling his stuff that he abandons them.
Yeah.
And that's a whole theme of the movie is one of the many themes I think is abandonment.
Blind ambition is...
Blind ambition, abandonment, selfishness, greed, but also the idea of just men abandoning their responsibilities for their own personal gain, men abandoning women because of their own, masculine, I gotta make money because making money is what makes me a man versus, being an attentive father, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's all kind of things like that really make that's the reason why that's in the movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? Of course it ends up going bad. We'll get into that. But yeah, it's a shitty plan. and then shitty on
terrible
purpose.
plan. God, I was just like, I mean, they're literally, not even his neighbor's wife is staying behind. He's just leaving his wife and his son by themselves.
Just in the countryside where you know that there are roaming
and they can't even go back to their own home.
No, they've got to like go through like secret mountain passes just to get back to where the other villagers are, and it's like so super dangerous.
I mean, like, he's like, I'll be back in 10 days.
I'll be back.
I mean, shit. Even if you
Gotta go,
if you were back
bye.
in 7 days, that would be like a long time without having like, knowing you're gonna have food or knowing you're gonna have a place to sleep, and like it's like
And this is, and I mean, we have to really emphasize, this is, like I said, 1500s, 1600s. This is super male-dominated societies where the men are literally the key part of these family units. They do everything, and because it's a male-dominated society, it's a patriarchy. And I think one of the themes of this movie is kind of showing... kind of critiquing the patriarchal society that exists, I would say not only back then, but perhaps even in modern day, when it comes to kind of abandoning responsibilities and stuff like that. And it's really interesting how that's working. Because there's even one point, I believe, when those soldiers were raiding the village, where they were taking a man from like his family, and the wife was like, we can't survive without him. And in that societal way, in the way that hierarchy works, that's true. The men, probably do all of the most of the labor. They make the money. They get the food. They're the providers of the family. Yeah. And that's something that's been existing through generations, whatever. But specifically in the time in which this movie is depicting, that's pretty damn true. So for the fact that Genjuro was like, I'll just leave him here on the bank. They'll be fine. Jeez. It's like, what are you doing?
Oh man.
But so that's one of his many mistakes that he makes in this movie. And so now he goes and he's selling his stuff.
Yeah, we cut to a crowded marketplace.
We cut to a crowded market. Apparently his stuff is selling well, I guess. Yeah.
Good for him. Good for him.
Well enough to the point where like his buddy Tobei takes his share of the profits right away and runs off. He's got to go buy his armor.
Yeah, he runs off, and his wife runs after him. And
but we didn't mention earlier. I completely forgot this. Is that initially after that first trip, he stayed behind. He didn't return home with Genjuro at the beginning of the movie. He stayed behind, and he was trying to get hired by samurai, and none of the samurai would take him seriously
because he didn't have armor.
No armor, no spear, and he's just a peasant. And they just look down upon him. So now his whole goal is to get armor, get a spear, and get hired and whatnot. He basically wants to work as like their vassal or their, not even squire, but whatever.
I mean, it's another level of these characters. Everything to them is about status. He wants to have status. And you need money to have status.
Very true.
And that's
especially at this time where there's probably no social mobility whatsoever.
I mean,
if you're a farmer, you're a farmer. You're not all of a sudden going to become a samurai.
I mean, Ganji says it at the beginning of the movie. He says, money is everything. He's like, I mean, it's everything to these two guys. I mean, specifically Ganji, but like the other guy, Tobei, is just obsessed with the status of it. He wants to be a samurai to feel like he's empowered and that he can be respected.
And yet again, he runs away.
Yeah.
And he abandons his wife once again. He literally abandons her to a pretty bad fate. We'll get into that. But he runs away, and he's gonna buy his armor. But while he's doing that, and he's also abandoning his friend. But anywho, but somebody comes along and buys a bunch of Genjuro's stuff. Buys like a sake, like a sake bottle.
They buy basically a set of dishes.
Yeah, like a set of dishes, like a vase, all kind of stuff, and they want it. And it's this woman, and this older woman, and basically they want it to be delivered to the what's it called, Katsuki Mansion? I think it's called the Katsuki Mansion.
Sounds about right.
And I could be wrong, but and they want it. They want to deliver there, but immediately he's transfixed by the woman.
Yeah.
There's just something about her that immediately lures him in, and he's just kind of like dumbfounded by her. And he's like, yes, yeah, of course, I'll do that. So his friend jets on him, gonna go buy. First of all, the armor that he buys looks pretty shitty.
Yeah, it's definitely not.
It's a small breastplate that doesn't really cover his chest, and it's like a moderate wooden spear, basically. I don't even know if it's a wooden spear, but it's a spear.
And then he knocks over their shop guy's like mannequin thing.
Yeah, like a mannequin of armor, like big suit of armor that he assembled.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it then cuts to Ohama and her being attacked by those men.
I think it does. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because she's going to look for him and she can't find him, and because he's literally abandoned her. And she's out kind of near the water, kind of outside of town, and she ends up getting attacked by a bunch of men who sexually assault her, rape her.
Well, they
seem to be
house they find. They seem to be samurais, and so it also gives you an idea that the men that her husband wants to become are the men that end up raping her.
Yeah,
you know?
That's an interesting connection. He's glorifying people he probably shouldn't be glorifying, but he doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
Because he's probably heard all these kind of cool legendary stories about, warriors and samurai and all this kind of stuff. And he doesn't realize that men can be, and we've seen it over the histories, inherently terrible when it comes to their treatment of people, of women, of society in general. And this movie's kind of showing that exists. And yeah, that's where we leave her, is she's literally physically abused, mentally abused, abandoned by her husband, and that's where we leave her for a little while. So now we cut back to Genjuro, and Genjuro's story is kind of the main center part of the movie, I would say.
Yeah.
We spend a lot more time with him than I think anyone else. So he's about to go deliver that order that we saw him take earlier. He's covering up. First of all, he's covering up his stuff, and he's talking to the guy next to him. He's like, "Hey, just watch my stuff here. I gotta go make a delivery. My partner should be back soon, at any time." But we know that his partners are never coming back.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting. He's just leaving all of his wares there, hoping no one will steal them.
Yeah.
When all he's doing is covering it with some hay. This doesn't seem like a time where people would be nice.
No.
It seems like a desperate time full of desperate people trying to survive.
Yeah.
So his stuff, either it shows his stupidity or naivete.
Well, he got some money, so he's now he's thinking about, what am I going to buy next? So he stops at that shop, he stops at.
Oh yeah, because he looks at the kimonos.
Yeah.
Because he already bought his wife a nice kimono earlier in the movie, and he wants to buy her more stuff. Yet again, like greed, materialism, he thinks those are the keys to happiness.
It also, I was gonna say, it also confirms how he views love. Like love is buying things for his wife. That's not what she needs from him. She
just needs him to be there.
Needs him to be there, and needs him to help raise his son. And yeah, I mean, he has a distorted version of what love is.
Yeah, and he has the whole like daydream fantasy sequence.
Yeah.
About that his wife's like looking at all these kimonos, and she loves them, and like she loves him, and all this kind of stuff. And then what's interesting is that the shopkeeper's like, yeah, you can't afford these, and he's like, yes, I can. I have the money. And he pats his change purse or whatever. So, but on his way to deliver this stuff, apparently those people just hung around, and they're like, "Hey, we'll show you the way." And I'm like, "Okay,
cool.
we'll show you the way to." It is called Katsuki Manor or Mansion. Katsuki Mansion. So he goes there, and how would you classify this whole sequence, Steven? It's like a weird, surreal seduction.
Yeah, I was gonna say it feels like they're just trying to lure him into this place.
They lure him in through, I don't even know the extravagance of it, but just the whole scenario of him just like being there, being just kind of, he's already enamored and like enchanted by this woman, and she just like pulls him in the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And they talk about a little bit about the history of Kotsuki Mansion and her family, where her servant, whose name I don't remember, that they're the only two survivors left after some soldiers killed her whole family, and basically her father's samurai armor's still there, but she also, like, his spirit is also living throughout the house as well. He sings when she starts dancing. It's a weird, surreal sequence.
Yeah.
and if I were again Juro, I would have gotten the hell out of there. But his mind is already deep in the mud.
It's a scene where it's like you feel that he is about to get over, like these people are going to overwhelm him, and they're going to take full, like they're just going to push him around and take full advantage of him, because basically they buy the dishes they buy all that stuff from him, and then they show him dishes, that all his dishes than what he was selling, by the way.
Yeah, and he remarks that they look so much better than
the thing is that
before, because they found such a luxurious home, with a noble woman, and he's like, all of my works are like
my
like
children,
basically. And
that was an interesting thing I noticed, was that we know what his pottery looks like. But then but
it doesn't look like that.
And then when she says, "Hey, this is," he's like, "Wait, these are mine." And I'm thinking to myself, they're not. But that's the point, is that he looks at things are distorted. This whole
place is
a distorted, reality. And
but what's so cool when watching this movie for the first time, I feel like this is one of those movies where I think going into it knowing the least amount possible, specifically, the twist, if you will, is the best. And better.
That's how I went in. That's how,
just not knowing it, because there's nothing that really gives it away right away. Everything just feels such as like okay, we're watching a surreal Japanese movie. There are many surreal Japanese movies. There's nothing real, even with the whole supernatural thing where, like, my father's spirit haunts this house, but, like, the way in which they set it up makes sense. Oh, he was, he was murdered, so he's like a vengeful spirit. Okay, that kind of makes sense, considering where we are. I mean, and they're constantly referencing, like, spiritual realms. They reference Buddha a lot in the movie, and there's a lot of spiritualness when it comes to Buddha. But so they have this kind of. And then she basically says that they're gonna get married, and that he's gonna be hers forever, and he's a fish on a hook that's been reeled in already, and he has, like, I don't know how much time lapses, but it's a little bit amount of time, because the next day he wakes up and he's like, where am I? and then she's like, oh, silly. What do you know where you are and all that kind of stuff. We're married and all and whatnot. And she, like, bathes him in, like, the warm springs, and they have, like, a lovely picnic by the water. It's all bliss, Steven. It's all happy
amazing.
Times. Oh, it's amazing. And let's cut back to reality for a second here. Let's bring it. Let's bring it back to harsh reality, back to his wife and child, Miyagi and Junichi, and they've made it back home, I think, or they made it someplace.
Well,
they've got to leave though.
Yeah. Well, you see them.
They hide out.
Yeah, you see them walking on a path, and then they get attacked. She gets attacked.
Yeah, well, what happens is I think like doesn't some elderly woman like helps them escape because like soldiers are like raiding everywhere looking for food and stuff, and they can't find any until they find like a pot of rice, and then they just like fight over it.
Yeah.
It just shows like this desperation of just just the desperation and just kind of the animal instinct of men where they'll kill each other for food and they'll kill each other over this and that, and also shows like what we also see, which the film really doesn't emphasize a lot on, is these guys went to war, and war typically is considered a man-made thing. Men seem to be the ones who go to war a lot. I'm just going by general historical history, just huge umbrella terms here. Of course, women have gone to war. Of course, women have started wars, etc., etc. I'm just saying in thematic generalities here. And now that like the war, I think we get the idea that they've lost the war, and these men are just roaming the hills, just doing nothing. They're just desperate, like nothing people with no purpose, even though they signed up for a war that they've gotten themselves into. You know what I mean? It just feels very baseline like that. But anywho, Junichi and Miyagi have to escape. This elderly woman says, "Hey, I can get you out of here." And this is where Steven said that they are on this road, and they get attacked. They basically get attacked by a bunch of men who are they're not even like aggressively like doing stuff. They almost seem like zombies. The way they're walking and the way they're acting, they just seem like desperate zombies roaming the countryside.
Yeah.
And what happens is
they just want her food.
They just want her food. And what happens is she ends up getting stabbed.
Yeah.
And she gets stabbed, and she's on the ground. She gets up, she walks a little bit, falls down, gets up, she walks a little bit, and then it cuts to another scene. So we don't know in that moment what happened to her.
Yeah.
But we do know later on in the movie.
Yeah.
We do know later on. So now we cut to Tobey. We get a little update. What he apparently has found himself. Speaking of war, he's in the middle of it.
Yeah.
He's on the battlefield, and it looks like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
No, he's probably just hiding out as much as he can.
Yeah, he's hiding in foxholes, like hiding behind trees. He's got a spear, but he doesn't know what he's doing because from what we understand, he has no training.
Yeah.
He's got no military background, no nothing. He's just playing make-believe, for the lack of a better term. And what ends up happening is he's hiding out, and he sees this general get beheaded. And someone is gonna take this guy's head as a trophy, and he goes up behind him and stabs him and takes it for himself. Which, I mean,
God, it's gutless.
Opportunistic.
He's gutless.
Opportunistic.
So gutless.
Yeah, really. Right place at the right time, I guess. So he picks it up, brings it back to town. And he's like, "Hey, I killed. Look what I did. I killed General whatever his name was. This great general." And then I guess this samurai's there is like,
they don't even. They don't even believe that he did it, but they gave him a.
They don't, but they're like, "All right,
we'll
guess you did.
We'll give you a reward anyway."
What do you want? And he's like, "Oh, he wants armor. He wants vassals. Basically, he wants the stature that he's craved so far." So then we get him, walking, strutting down the street, like John Travolta in Saturday Night Fever, with all of his homies,
sure,
just behind him, holding his horse and all this kind of stuff, and then this woman stops them. I guess she runs the local
brothel.
Brothel. Yeah, that's the word.
Yeah.
She's like, you and your soldiers stop here. Don't go any further, and all this stuff. And then he's like, "Oh, I guess they've deserved it, so they might as well stop by. It's on me, basically." And so they're all hanging out at this brothel with the women and the sake and the stuff and all this kind of stuff. Come to find out, his wife's working there as a prostitute.
Yep, she's the best one too, right?
And what happens is I guess somebody was trying to run out on her, not pay.
Yeah.
and then she's chasing him, and then she's grabbing him, and then then they eventually get the money from him, and then she turns around, and who's standing there? It's Tobey with all of his armor, and he's got the cool hair now with the stuff. He's looking like Toshiro Mifune or whatever, and he
wishes.
Yeah, he wishes. Well, the thing is, he wishes he was Toshiro Mifune.
Yeah, right.
But like he's like dumbfounded to see her there. Absolutely dumbfounded, shocked.
It's like he forgot that he had a wife.
It's like he forgot that she existed. What's interesting is though, right before that is he was talking about like how he was on his way home to see her.
Yeah.
But I'm like, God, you just left her in the middle of nowhere. Where do you think happened to her?
Yeah.
Yet again, it just shows this absent-minded, reckless thought process and just, selfish abandonment of men with their responsibilities.
Yeah.
Like he assumed that, okay, she found her way home.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you thinking? But anywho, it's like she's become a fallen woman now, and that's where this whole idea of Mizoguchi's film series about fallen women and stuff like that, and even Life of Oharu is about a fallen woman. It's really fascinating how he's touching on that. He's also touching on of how prostitution, I believe, was something that a lot of women fell into because of wars, where their men would probably go off and fight and die, or as we saw in this movie, the soldiers would come in and take the men, and then women would have to fall into, hence the name fallen women, fall into being prostitutes in order to survive financially, or have a place to live.
Well, I mean,
like
some
that.
of it is probably also kind of a religious somewhat. I mean, like the fact that a woman during this time gets raped, she finds that she's not she's ruined.
Yeah, she did say that. Yeah, this idea of kind of losing one's grace or something like that.
And that no man's going to want to marry her now, so she might as well,
Or that even her husband will want nothing to do with her now.
Yeah.
There's even that idea. Yeah. But what happens is she tries to run away from him, and then he chases after her, and they end up basically reconciling.
Yeah. Yeah.
They end up reconciling.
Not fully at this point.
At that moment.
But they're on their way to it.
Right.
But we cut back.
We cut back to Genjuro, and he's back in town, and he I forgot, isn't he selling stuff? I think again. He's selling his stuff, and he buys the kimonos he was going to buy for his wife. He buys it for, I guess, his new wife, in quotes. in what's her name? Her name is Lady Wakasa. I want to say her name is. Let me actually look that up because that's important. So he's buying her, Lady Wakasa. He buys her some stuff, but as he's leaving, you know what's crazy? He's buying it, and then he says, "Hey, can you deliver them to Kutsuki Mansion?" And then the guy's like, "What?" And the guy's like, just take the stuff, keep your money, just get out of here.
Yeah.
So he doesn't think anything like it, anything of it.
Okay, all right.
I would have asked some follow-up questions.
Yeah, me too. But
why?
Then again, this is the same guy that left his wife on a beach during a war. So
very true.
So.
And he's fallen in love with some woman he's just met and lives in a mansion with her now.
Yeah.
So gotta take that. So as he's leaving town to go back to the mansion, he runs into what I assume is some type of holy man
or wizard or whatever. His hairstyle.
Did you see the getup he was wearing? He did look like a wizard.
Yeah, Japanese samurai wizard. It's pretty cool, actually. But I mean,
it was actually pretty cool. His headpiece was quite extravagant. But I think he's like the guy's like a priest or something like that, like a Buddhist priest or something like that. But he's like, hey, there's an aura of death around you. You got to come back to my place. I got to talk to you.
I need to check you out.
You got some bad mojo happening around you, my friend. I got to talk to you. So he brings him there and he basically tells him, there's just this aura of death around you that's basically, sucking the life out of you. There's just bad stuff happening around you. And then he basically explains to him what's going on.
Yeah.
And what he ends up doing is what we see revealed in like the next scene is he paints like these Buddhist prayers on his body, like all over his body to protect him from these kind of evil spirits that are attacking him. And so he goes back to Lady Wasaka, to Katsuki Mansion, and we have this whole kind of revelatory scenario that happens where we find out that Lady Wakasa and her servant woman are spirits.
Yeah.
They are not living. They are essentially ghosts. They don't really use the term ghost, but they're ghosts.
Yeah.
And what is interesting is that he doesn't, like, he freaks out, but he also resists, I think, freaking out fully. Because I feel like he's trying to, like, he wants to be there, but he knows he can't be there. And, like, he feels bad.
Yeah.
And what I also learned in that scene, I don't know if you picked up on this, Steven, is when, he's lying on the ground and his shirt's off and we see all the prayers written on him. And the servant woman is basically telling him this whole story about what happened is that Lady Wakasa and her whole family were murdered. And Lady Wakasa never got to basically live a full life.
Yeah.
Or at least live a life that had, love in it. She was never able to fall in love and be happy and all this kind of stuff. So in a way, they've come back to the living world in order to fulfill that. But now that plan's kind of gone aside. So what is kind of interesting is typically when I've noticed this, when we get movies that depict spirits or ghosts or stuff like that, they're usually like, malevolent. They're usually bad. But I don't get that fully here. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I didn't. Well, I guess I didn't pick up on it in a. It's not a salacious, type of evil. It's not like they can physically harm him. It seems, but it does seem that it is. I would say that it still is kind of evil.
It's
because they basically lured. They basically enchanted him.
Yeah, they lured him in and like. Lied to him.
They kind of casted a spell on him. I mean,
in a way, but it's done to. But it's done. But
think
about
it. There's a parallel.
It's done just to like feel love. You know what I mean?
It's a parallel to his own story. Where you could say, he's doing the things he does. He says out of love, but it's not really. It's more about selfishness. Just like this lady,
yeah,
she
yeah, that's true.
It's all about a selfish need for love for her, and I mean it kind of, that's the parallel with them characters, I think, and it also reminds him what his wife wanted out of him was just to be there and to be loved.
Yeah, what is interesting is that that this ghost person just wants like love and a happy life. And he had that already, to a certain extent. If we're just going on that basis of like a wife, a loving wife, a child, stuff like that.
But the reason, but the reason he's there is because of what he
that wasn't enough for him.
It wasn't enough. Clearly. I mean, like it was all the other things that made him get lured in, which was like, that he thought she was very beautiful and that this the place that they lived was very beautiful, and like it wasn't about the connection with the person, and that's what he, I think, finds out by this moment and gets guilty about.
Well, he also feels super guilty because he tells her that I'm already married. I have a wife. I have a child. I'm sorry I lied to you. So I think that guilt is there too. But I think he also feels the guilt of, like we said before, of abandoning them.
Yeah.
For this lie of a life that he's living.
Yeah.
Or trying to live at the moment. But what happens is he grabs a samurai sword, that's from like her father's armor, and then he's like swinging it around, and then and then he leaves the mansion, and then he passes out right outside the mansion.
Yeah.
And he wakes up the next day. A bunch of soldiers they accuse him of stealing the sword from some type of museum that's nearby. But he's like, "What are you talking about? I got it from Kutsuki Mansion." And he's like, and the guys are like, they all laugh at him. They're like, "Man, Kutsuki Mansion, we're here already. The place is a hovel. It was destroyed years ago." And then, so they take his money coincidentally, and then they just leave him. They're like, "Hey, if this was normal times, we'd probably arrest you. But hey, it's not normal times."
He must be crazy.
He must be crazy.
Yeah.
They take his sword and they take his money, and then he goes and walks back, and the mansion is not there. It's just burned pieces of wood.
Yeah,
it's just pieces of wood. There's not even a skeleton of a house. It's nothing there. But he hears the voice of the woman, of what Lady Wakasa, talking to him, and basically just like, hey, we could have had like a great life and all this kind of stuff and whatnot, and that's it. And he returns, so he leaves there.
I think this is when we cut back to the other two.
And Tobei's throwing his stuff in the water.
Yeah, he's throwing all his...
What a dumb shit.
Throwing all his gear into the river and
I'm like, dude, you could sell that and make some money. What are you doing?
He's special.
I don't know. Yeah, he's kind of dumb. But, so, yeah, they're throwing him in. He's like, yeah, my life as a samurai is over and all this kind of stuff. It's a quick scene. It's a really quick scene.
She's like, you're going to work hard now.
Now you're working hard.
You're not going to bitch out. You ain't bitching out again.
Yeah, you're working for the weekend now. And what happens is, so Genjuro returns home, and he's looking for his wife and Junichi, and they're waiting for him.
Yep.
And he arrives late at night, and they're sitting by. His son is sleeping, but he's sitting by. But his wife is like making something over the fire or whatever at their old home, and he holds his son. He's so happy to be home. Steven, you're watching this for the first time. Oh my goodness, she survived. Oh, she's okay. I guess that stab wound wasn't as bad as we thought. Oh, what a big happy ending. Oh, it's all so lovely. So he falls asleep next to his son. She sits by the fire. She's sewing the kimono that I believe she got earlier in the movie. And then the next morning happens, and things aren't as they seem.
Yeah, some neighbors come by to.
Yeah, it's like the head chief of the village, and then some other people come in, and they're like, yeah, Steve, you can go. They're like,
yeah, I mean, the
kid left last night.
Well, it's them first meeting up with him for the first time, and he's like, they're coming to check on the boy because they, because
he left. He just left in the middle of the night.
The chief has been taking care of him because what we find out is his wife's been dead for a while.
Yeah, what we learn, and because he's like, he looks for Miyagi. He's like, Miyagi, like, just to get her because they're here, and then the chief says, she was killed by soldiers. Yeah. She's been gone for a while. I've been taking care of the boy myself. He's been staying in my home. And he's dumbfounded. And he doesn't even mention that he saw her the previous night. I don't think they'd believe him. Yeah. They probably think he was, probably crazy. And what is interesting is, and it's a really sad ending. Damn, it's a pessimistic ending. Damn, it's sad.
Well, I mean, his wife is dead. And I'll say this, even though it was my first time watching it, I kind of assumed she was dead anyway. So the way that the scene is set up at the end, where like he kind of goes through the house and doesn't see anything, and then it kind of does this like pan shot, and then suddenly
great cinematography.
Yeah, suddenly the inside of the house is kind of a little bit more like put together, and there she is, and I'm like, man, this is a ghost.
This is a dream.
This is a dream or a ghost, and like I'm like, this isn't real. So I picked up on it. So.
Yeah, there was another great pan shot earlier in the movie, when he is at Kutsuki Mansion with Lady Wakasa, and they're in that spring tub thing, and and he's sitting there, and then she like takes off his clothes. She takes off her clothes, and we assume she's gonna get in the water with him. We don't see it; it's kind of cut off frame for obvious reasons. And then the camera just keeps panning left, just keeps panning and panning, and then it pans right into them having that picnic. Near the water, like I said. And I'm like, and there's just a subtle dissolve transition right there, and it's like, damn, that's some beautiful cinematography, some beautiful editing. But yeah, it's and the movie ends with, basically he does hear Miyagi's spirit talk to him. And I think she says like basically I'm always with you, or I'll always be with you, and stuff like that. And the movie ends with him. He's continuing his pottery. He's continuing working, and he's, raising his son, and her grave is right there. And, like, the son offers food to her grave, and because apparently the grave is literally right next to the house.
Yeah.
Kind of morbid. But, yeah, and then that's how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a scene there right at the end where when he finds out that she's dead, there's a scene of him at her grave, like talking to her spirit and stuff like that. It's a really bitter ending. I was gonna say bittersweet. I don't know about the sweet part.
I don't know if there's a lot of sweetness, but you get the impression that he's definitely had a change. He's making his pottery at the end, and his son, before they get this food that he offers to the grave, you can see him kind of like sitting with his son. His son's doing something. You can tell he's engaging with his son a little bit.
Yeah, he's working the kiln. Yeah, he's working the kiln to make more pottery and stuff. But what is so sad I find about it is he had it all and didn't realize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a universal message that I think a lot of people don't understand today, that they want more, even though they already probably have
that's
what they need.
What's
you know what I mean?
What's the saying? Be aware of what you have, and not I'm trying to think of the right phrase, but there's it's like be
like
grateful for what you have. Stop being our culture is the way it's set up a lot is just about propelling ourselves to want more and to want things. When but we can't. We're not thinking about and being thankful for what we have. And sometimes you need to decide that you have enough. I don't need anything else. And but that's just it's a struggle we have as humans, is to always want more things. And that's, I think, where our character, I think hopefully matured at the end, and is, going to focus on his kid, and, surviving for his kid, and but we won't know, because that's where the movie ends.
That's where the movie ends. Yeah. But like I said, this, man, it's such a, you feel bad for him, because you almost want to like assess your own life and like, maybe I am this guy. maybe sometimes I do stuff that
is only in self-interest.
That's not only self-interest, but like like I said, like you're not grateful for what you have, and you're always looking for something more. You know what I mean? It's an interesting self-evaluating film. But I think it's a great film.
It is.
I think it's really good. Like I said, it's very concise. Yeah. It's 95 minutes long, but every scene pushes the thing forward, and we kind of went over everything, and it's not but there's so much packed into 95 minutes.
I don't give a lot of 5 stars, but this was a 5-star movie for me.
Yeah, it's a 5-star for me too. This was coincidentally the 3rd time I've seen it. And it's still a 5-star for me, just because it still holds up, because those themes are still so strong.
Yeah.
And I just love the performances, and yeah, I just think it's a really great film, and I think it gets lost sometimes. I think not only in Japanese cinema, but even in the cinema of Kenji Mizoguchi, because Kenji Mizoguchi, like I said, passed away, relatively young.
Yeah.
Half a century ago, even longer than that. And I think he's a really great a filmmaker and director that I want to get more of his stuff from, just add to my personal collection, just to kind of tie it into chasing labels. I would assume that Criterion has a lot of his stuff, but he does have a lot of credits to his name. That's the one thing that I noticed too about Mizoguchi, is that he has 99 directorial credits according to IMDb. And a lot of them are, actually not a lot of them. Many of them are shorts, but many of them look like features.
Okay.
Yeah, his career stemmed all the way from 1923 to 1956.
Wow.
He
did a lot. He did a lot in a small amount of time.
Yes.
So very prolific. So yeah, I mean, to put a cap on this, it was a pleasant surprise of a movie for me. First time watching it, I loved it, and I am excited to get into more Mizoguchi, and we will definitely do that going forward with our new podcast. You know, I'm sure we'll go over some releases of his at some point. But that is the end of this episode of Cinema Discovery Project. Where can we find you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as my YouTube channel, Capzilla Productions.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me on Instagram at Stephen Billings or Cinema Discovery Project. I might change that to Chasing Labels, you know, just to match up with the new podcast. Also, you can find me on Letterboxd at Cinema Discovery. And you can find the audio for this podcast on Podbean and Apple Podcasts. Thank you once again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.